Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Never Alone. So we played the main game, so let's now play the Foxtails. I assume we're just going to have about an hour worth of extra content telling a different story with what I assume is going to be a co-op collection of two brother characters. Let's see, we're starting the game and immediately we have an insight unlocked, the Coastal Brothers. Let's watch that. This is one of those
in 1964,
series where
my grandfather,
I sit around and just watch videos a lot.
Punnik. He was invited by archaeologists and anthropologists from Brown University. He was invited to the Onion Portage site, this ancient sacred site of the Iñupiat people. And it was really special for my grandfather to be included in that kind of thing because it showed the respect they had for him, for his knowledge, for what he had to offer. And while they were there, while they were camped out there, when they had some quiet time, he told some stories. One of the stories that my grandfather told was the story of the Coastal Brothers. These two brothers, they have their own particular skills. They go out to the Noatak River area and they go to try to challenge and hopefully defeat this giant mouse who is destroying everything in its path. The development team really took a great interest in the story that my grandfather told because it really enhances those themes that we found in Never Alone. One of interdependence, another of Iñupiat values, love of our elders and of our land and of our traditions. I mean, it helped to really bring that out, and so that's one reason why it really captivated the interest of the team.
So maybe a little bit of nepotism you could be accused here, in that you have, I believe, one of the people who worked on making this game having DLC story based on his grandfather's story and showing that there is an entire book there. Although, again, probably a short story, and we'll just have to wait and see as far as the level of quality and how well the story converts to video game form. Now this guy sounds almost exactly like the other narrator, even though the credits said it was a different narrator.
Ilakata asin inyuna huni kiktarugmi. Iglo pilgupluni anak takmata. Angunel gupluni lu. Ilangat purral guneksok. Ilan narik tapkok iksitsuk. Supayami ikaw matrong tarik ipnat chairman tarungmun at turut ukpigoramig angahoting ilokating pilgupluting suli sangipluting.
What does it mean when it said they would only use like willow oak for their paddles? Does that mean they were wise in making their paddles and that's the right kind of oak? Or does that mean willow oak is just a special, maybe more quiet paddle to make of? Like, again, we're not getting enough insight for a game that has insights in it. It really would be helpful if there was some annotation happening here to better explain things. And then I have to immediately point out that this story of the Coastal Brothers is being once again perverted, and I do think perverted is the right term, in that the game is going to replace the brothers with the girl and the fox from the main game, which only exacerbates the problem that the girl in the main game was actually a man or a boy. I think a man, really. So not only sexism but possibly ageism too. And they just turned it into a girl character. There was two brothers. One was living somewhere on the coast, and the other brother was living in the Kotzebue area. And this is coming from Willie Goodwin Sr. Panic. It would just straight up be laziness if we do play as the girl. This is a more bright and colorful area. Although I inherently wouldn't assume that mice did exist in the area. So we're just straight up tutorializing again on this side game, and we are playing as the girl and the fox, which also ignores the fact that the fox dies and then comes back in spirit form. I do like the bright colorfulness of this, but yeah. I definitely think this is just straight up laziness. Here you can see water flowing, which we already see. It's interesting the girl character is laughing here. Like, clearly this content would have been made after the main game and added later, whereas you could retroactively have added the high-spiritedness, the emotionalness, the laughing would have been good at the beginning of the main game. Now we're gonna paddle, and you hold it and then row back and forth. I don't think I've ever seen a game where you actually have to row. I don't know if that really adds much to the gameplay. So what's funny is this narrator is calling it a girl when it should have been, I think the real original story version would be a brother, a boy. Okay, we can't go any further, so maybe we're just supposed to straight up swim? I don't even know if we're looking for owls as a way of getting more of the insights, or if we're looking for something else. So there's this spirit. Which I guess this spirit is supposed to go here. And then possibly drag him down this way. Yeah, I don't like spinning in a circle to row. Yeah, didn't realize that's how I was controlling it. So we gotta redo this. Feels like the story is once again kind of struggling to have an antagonist, and that a giant mouse is just going to be the antagonist. it is straight up going to be owls. Down and A to jump from Umiak. What is Umiak? Seems like the move here is a little bit more of a challenge. Move the currents. This does pose an interesting thought as far as what would the main game have looked like if I could have controlled the direction of the winds. So that's 2 of 5 of insights already.
I wasn't raised here, but my mom talked about how it'd be so dark.
Yeah, it was dark in the wintertime. In December 21st, we see the sun for about 3 hours. The rest is dark. So the days start to get longer right after that, shortly after that.
My mom, in her story, she says the real people come out. Everyone comes alive just because they've been inside so long.
I'm always happy when spring's here because the caribou are migrating north. The bears are coming out of hibernation. Rabbits and stuff, they're all over the place. And they're not hiding under the snow anymore.
You know, like the elders used to tell me, as soon as they saw those snow buntings, the small birds, the new season would start for gathering food. They knew they'd be happy because the fresh food is starting to come around.
We'd be getting geese eggs or seagull eggs or any kind of duck eggs.
We'd go camping in the early spring, go out with dog teams when I was a kid to a spring camp. And it was anywhere that my folks thought that we can get the most food. Right here in the peninsula, we'd walk back from our camp and hunt muskrats, and my mom would dry the skins.
And so it's a time of just all the gathering activities, all the busyness. It's when the life really springs up again.
Interesting there that you don't have them mentioning mice in all that list of animals coming out during spring. And an interesting reveal too that the main guy, who I think actually worked on this game, reveals that he wasn't even in the area. He wasn't raised in the area. He probably was in a more urban south part of Alaska, if not raised in mainland United States, to be educated enough to know how to program and make video games. Although at a certain level he gives off the air that he might actually be more of a college professor who has made a doctorate in his own cultural studies and may thus just by default potentially become the world's biggest reference or knowledgeable person on the culture as far as the academia world is concerned. Yeah, and there's just a invisible wall there, so this really does feel like we're just going to paddle, and it definitely feels like there's it's literally just a story of chasing a mouse. And I think that's going to be the entirety of the story. And the platforming elements here are not part of the spoken world. I do think we probably will have some swimming sections to this also. And so I'm trying to interact with this, and weirdly it's not working. And haven't tried to use the bolas yet. Seems like this is possibly introducing some tunnels and some creatures in the tunnels, some grippy style crab arms or something. Hold Y to change direction. Okay. So, I was looking for a spirit to move since that's what the game has trained me to this point. Now we're just able to change directions, which is something different. Imagine we won't find an owl under the water. But who knows? We may find exactly that. We may literally just not ever get back on land to see if we can use Ebolas. I can see some timing puzzles here to swim fast. You can see that these grabbing arms are the equivalent of the arms of the Northern Lights, but smaller. So I'm guessing the move is probably to not move that one. If I don't move that one, what am I supposed to do? I guess we just take the long way. Works. Kind of sounds like I was almost running out of oxygen there. Now that I'm standing on a platform, it doesn't seem like the bolas are equipped. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't ever get Ebola's ability. Seems to me if you time this particularly well, you'll well be able to make these jumps. That seems like that's what you were supposed to do. And then, whoops. Just tap A bunch and I should be able to just skip all of that. But maybe the game won't let me. Nope, it will. It definitely feels like there would have been room for slippery walls that you can't climb up. What I would think, as far as a moral tale, since you have these two characters who are supposed to be the two brothers, antagonizing and harassing the mouse, is that this really should be a moral tale where it's more like a Grimm's fairy tale and it just straight up, the mouse straight up eats one of the brothers or captures one of the brothers, and then the other brother has to ask for forgiveness and promise never to harass them ever again. Harass animals ever again. Not sure what I'm supposed to do here. Yeah, it would be my thought that you would either completely have to apologize for your bad behavior, or you would have to be killed or severely punished in some other way. I am super confused as to what I'm supposed to do, and I know this isn't that long of a level in the game, so having these extra like potential difficulty spikes is where you could lose people. Certainly I could see oh, there, you're, I guess, supposed to just swim upward. Like, I can see people who even have made it all the way to the credits of the main game say it's not really worth it if I'm just gonna die for such a short experience. So the move is to come up here. Now what?
Iyangat ikayutik sangat sakweksok. At jutik iplugu annek sutik sangat nik.
So we've got a new item. I'm gonna throw the item. And it was a rock to block the path. With these visuals and with this general concept, I could see making a completely new story and concept. And then you could say it was slightly inspired by your culture and your people, while not having to try and have the entirety of the story be repeated. Just throw one this way and see what happens. Just have it roll downwards. I don't feel like this is a game where marble or sphere ball rolling physics could be introduced at this point. Introducing any new concept is probably asking a little too much, because you're just not going to get to play with that concept enough to make it interesting. And I'm gonna just generally assume that there isn't an owl far to the right. The platforming in this game is obviously not the purpose, so I guess there's no real reason to criticize the game too much and say, oh, I would want 5 times as much platforming or way more of a challenge in the platforming. I will say though, this rock throwing gimmick does feel like something that should potentially have retroactively been added to the main game, but that would take a lot more effort. Also, definitely seems like you could have just kept on adding content, but I doubt even this Foxtails edition really gets you any extra sales. There is a real problem with this game in that the phrase "never alone" doesn't really make enough sense. It's not explained well enough, and these thumbnails and the just general sales pitch makes it a very cultish style of game. It's not a AAA first-person shooter like Call of Duty or something like that. It's gonna not bring in your average audience, and yeah, so you have to kind of work within those confines and work within that budget, knowing that your game will never sell 10 million copies no matter what you do. Your best case scenario is you have a lot of people sing the praises of your game, and then it wins a few awards, and then maybe then you get funded to make another game that's more mainstream, and then that mainstream game maybe grows your company enough that you could give away or convince people to buy your first game that is less mainstream.
Because we're all Iñupiats, you know, upriver, along the coast, I'm considered coastal. Tare mi means I'm next to the ocean. Kung mi is up the river. And I'm proud to be a Tare mi because I can hunt out there where those guys can't. I was taught to be aware of all the conditions out there. In fact, a friend of mine, an elder, he's passed away since. One year he came down, he had a small boat just as the ice was going. He followed the ice down from Cayenne, okay? And he came down, he says, Willie, I come down just to go see how you guys hunt. Let's go. I said, okay. I got my boat ready and we took out. And the ice was moving out there, you know, big chunks and that kind of stuff. So there was one area over on the Kuzentern side I was watching, being aware of how the ice was moving, how fast the current was moving, that kind of stuff. Automatically, you know, I was taught that by my dad. I was really watching and everything. I said, oh, we got to get out of here. And he looked at me and said, how come? I said, our way to get out of here is closing up. So I took off. And he was right behind me. I went through okay, and then he went through, and he said he looked back after we went through, and the ice came up. It came together and came up like that. And he shook his head when we came back, and he said, I will never question the price of seed oil again. I see the danger you guys go through. If you don't know what you're doing, bad things can happen to you out there. Yeah.
That's a great story.
Well, it's the truth, you know,
Yeah.
what I went through.
It's interesting you have the interviewer heard this time, when every other insight they've edited out the interviewer's comments or questions. It also sounded like, as he said the word back, that the character looked back as he was telling his story, he personally turned back and turned his head, and the microphone didn't pick him up as well, which, yeah, do a second take of at least that line or that sentence. Don't just keep that in. Okay. So I pick this up, and then what do I do with it? Like, I guess you throw it in the boat. And by throwing it in the boat, I guess that moves the boat. And then I guess that means you have to go back and forth. I'm not sure I really like the idea of a platforming game where you're going back and forth. As a way of just stretching out the gameplay. There are definitely ways to do it to make it more interesting, I imagine. So am I supposed to like drop down here? Or drop down on this side? Weirdly, it kind of feels like there isn't a great way, because it feels like I'm just gonna have to like do a little bunny hop to get into the water. And I guess I could have just gotten in the water at any point, come to think of it. Like nothing's really stopping me. And see, I'm not sure if I need to interact with this spirit or if this spirit down there is something I've already interacted with. I think it's something I've already interacted with. And we're close to the end. It's an interesting argument. We got another achievement here as far as, is the Nanuet culture too dangerous of a culture to be allowed to exist? Who has the real authority to say no, a culture shouldn't exist, is a deeper thought, certainly, that you'd have to answer that question first. But I mean, when your entire culture is around whaling and working on boats and hunting, and at any point a lack of meat could cause your family, or if not your entire tribe, to starve to death over winter, maybe the comfort and safety of mainland United States is just where people should be living and move to. Of course, that really would kill the pioneer spirit, certainly, of moving to like Mars, or ever exploring or living on Mars, because it's even more dangerous to do that. And it has been always the case, as far as written history, as long as written history has existed, that there's been people that, for one reason or another, want to go to a pioneer or live in a more difficult environment. And there is an argument that life doesn't have to be easy, but it also potentially takes away advantages and a level of safety from your next generation. Those are, I guess, personal thoughts people would have to have, and personal decisions people would have to make. And certainly that is also the argument that many people set on committing cultural genocides have made, is that the Native Americans in mainland United States were not capable of raising their children properly, or raising them in a safe way. And thus a lot of the Puritans took the children of Native Americans and tried to raise them in a proper Christian upbringing, killing off their culture, killing off their heritage. Let's see. It says, at another village, Noatak village, Noatakers had been telling a story about a canyon, ... Any big boat that came through the main river to Noatak was also swallowed. Okay, let's continue. It definitely feels like the second narrator is telling a story that has been scripted for him for the purpose of a video game, where the first narrator very possibly was narrating a story he knew, and that's why the pronouns weren't changed. Whereas they are definitely changing it here. It goes from the two brothers to the two friends. And you're also seeing a great example of unification of mythical stories. Almost certainly the original versions of a lot of stories around, say, Hercules didn't actually include Hercules as the name of the character, but particularly when you're telling a story verbally and over again over generations, it makes a lot of sense to simplify the narrative and have the hero be Hercules every time, instead of having to name a new hero and reestablish the character building on that new hero. It's a little weird that it's being done in video game form though, that all the characters are being replaced with the fox and the girl. At a certain point it has a feeling of almost like the BioShock Infinite ending, where there's just always a lighthouse and there's always a girl and there's always a male character. Okay. Not 100% sure what I'm supposed to be doing here, but let's just throw it a ball here and see what happens. Not as much as I thought would happen. I don't know if we lost our rock, and if we needed to shoot the rock there. I think that's exactly what we needed to do. So back we go. It's a little interesting that the characters jump in the boat as it approaches them, but the controls on this boat are not great. You can see how it just kind of keeps on floating, which, well, that may be accurate physics as far as friction goes. That's where video games are better off not being that accurate. Like, I can't jump in the water. The water waves are not really pushing it. So I was supposed to just, I guess, hit X so I would drop it over the side, and that's just not what I was expecting at all. I was expecting that I was going to have to awkwardly throw it over a side and hope it hit. That's kind of a basic video game thing that you would expect. You would be thinking on that two-dimensional plane, and that there wouldn't be a foreground or background element that you could interact with. Even if the game shows you a foreground and background images, they tend to be only there for visual, almost exclusively, almost always they're only there for visual addition, not for any interactive reason. It does kind of feel like we could miss the last one or two owls, because it feels like there really is going to be only a small number of see. Yep, it feels like there's only going to be a small number of puzzles. Okay. Okay. That seems to have succeeded in the way think we wanted it to. So what is the advantage of this? Moving this in any way? Yeah, I really don't see an advantage to moving that spirit. Seems like it may very well have just been a red herring. Unless pushing two of these together would have created some kind of current. The fact that you play this game in single player and just one character just stands there and does nothing probably highlights how your experience might be if you were playing co-op, where one player is just doing everything. Yeah, honestly, this would probably be a very poor co-op experience because you're not letting both players act or interact at the same time. And for the most part, the co-op games that I think are good, as somebody who doesn't really play co-op, would be something like Portal 2's co-op, where the two players are capable of doing quite a bit in their own time, separately, or some of the other co-op games where you're in completely different areas helping each other but not working on the same goal or interacting with the same things. Not sure what was supposed to happen there. Once again. Am I supposed to jump up here and avoid being hit? Or are both characters supposed to jump up here and avoid being hit? It kind of feels like what you could do is just get this going a little bit and then swim. But that seems to kill the fox. Either I'm drowning or the fox is dying. So let's just do this. Throw the fox out. Well, the fox doesn't want to stay out. Okay. No, it is. You're getting drawn in by the current, and then the current is assumedly carrying you downward with an undertow current. Which, yeah, that's very confusing. You basically would need the game to have a very whitewater choppiness to it to visually differentiate between places where you can swim. So this is supposed to be the village, I guess? Now here's a very weird take on this in that I guess we're bowling to get the rock where it needs to be. Yeah, I'm completely uncertain as to how this is all supposed to play out. I guess that's the last part of the puzzle. have we really done enough to establish that when one of these rocks gets rolled and it breaks the other rocks, does that mean the spirits will stop giving us more of the rocks? Or is this a case where they're just giving us multiple places where we can get rocks? Right. See, throwing a rock that way doesn't seem to lead to anything. We do see an owl, which makes me think this might be our last puzzle too. While we're here, let's take the extra height gaining ability of the fox. There is a high potential punishment if you don't play correctly here, and that you have to regain all of your rocks after. Yeah, so second to last one, with the last one potentially unlocking at the end of the game, at the end of this extra
That's my dad.
content.
Picture of my dad.
Appa Willie, my grandfather Willie, he was a respected hunter, so he was the provider for the large family.
My father embodied all the Iñupiat values. He used them all as much as he can every day, and he loved to talk to people.
He shared a lot of stuff that he got from out, whether it be out in the ocean or in land. He shared with people.
We all loved him because he treated us with respect, all of us kids. When we followed him, when I started to follow him with John to go hunt out in the ocean out here, he would talk to us while we're hunting and point things out to us. You know, how to expect things, how to do things out in the country, or...
It teaches how to set traps, where to put the traps, how to bait them.
Wow,
My dad
all of
was
these
born and raised in Selwick. He grew up
people are
in
related,
springtime and summertime using a kayak,
like in the same
and they can go on
family.
days on a kayak.
So he taught us all that about hunting seals, bearded seals, and then hunting beluga also. You know, he showed us how.
I never forget my dad. Every time he'd say something, I don't know what he'd say. I remember he'd wake me up after early in the morning, 5 o'clock, when it's still dark. He'd kiss me in his cheek, wake me up. I remember he said, "Bye, John, you behave now." I'll never forget that. So one day he did that. He said, "If anything happened to me, I want you to take care of Mom," like I did. But I see the affection there and the bond he had with me. He taught me.
So, yeah, two things there. A big reveal, certainly, that it looked like 3 people were directly in the family line of this one person, which at a certain level, if your culture is literally just one family line, I don't know if that's really a tribe as much as it is potentially just a family line, or maybe even a cult. At a certain point, the word cult is literally in culture, probably for that reason. Although most definitions I've heard of cult is that it's a cult if the leader or the person most focused on is alive, where it's a religion if the person is, for the most part, not alive. Christians might argue Jesus is still alive, but ignoring that. But yeah, it definitely highlights when, if there's just so few people, it would be very easy, and almost certainly it has been done quite a lot, where somebody writes a book and says, this is our culture, this is what our tribe is like, and it is just heavily biased or potentially completely made up, and it is just one person rewriting history to their own desires. And then you also have a smaller point here that I do think there probably is some sexism here, in that he's telling the child to take care of their mother. And yeah, we've seen several pictures of people hunting, and I've never seen a female in any of those pictures as far as hunting, so there's some gender divide there, in which the males are not free to stay at home or pursue some other passion, and the females are not free to go on hunts. So, if that is true, as it seems to be true, the fact that we're playing as a female, I think, is perhaps inaccurate in a form of aspirational equality. There's also the fact that several of the females in the videos of the main game had tattoos on their chin, and yet none of the males seem to have any tattoos on their chin, although one male did have tattoos all over his chest. I'm still really not sure, because in particular, well, I guess I got it rock thrown to me. That was helpful. Maybe I'm supposed to just do that. See, I don't get it. Like, I guess I need to come here and break this rock. Then that will have the wind blow the rock this way and throw another rock this way, which then I guess would let me move this downward. There seems to be a barrier stopping that. Okay. So let's try that. Hope that works. Interesting, the same rock worked. So you could almost get like a hole-in-one on this. And then I guess I'm supposed to do that. Although it seems like I could also do this. And I kind of think there might be an achievement here, so let's try. So, just kind of carefully put the boat here, because he's dropping the snow thing, and it's rolling. I'm just going the wrong direction. Which I think that does prove that my concern wasn't really that valid that after the rock had been used once, it would have stopped dropping snowballs or rocks or whatever they are. Although weirdly, it's not dropping anymore. Nope, there. We just got another. It's like he was waiting for me. I don't know if this is gonna work though. It gets a little bit of a push, but not as much as it once did. And it goes this way. And it gets a big push to go that way. Alright, and in the water we go. I'm just assuming we're swimming from this point, and either we're not getting back on the boat, or the boat will just magically be where we want it to be. We don't have a bola or weapon, however, so the end of the story feels like it's not going to involve that. So we've got a puzzle here, but weirdly there was a puzzle over on the left side too, and now I can't go there. So did we just manage to miss a whole section? An extra puzzle? I would hope the game wouldn't let that happen. Kind of a jump scare for no reason. And no achievement around that or anything. So maybe you just needed to do that to move that creature. Or maybe that was just something extra that would have been left on the cutting room floor otherwise. Okay. What do we want to do? Do that, I guess. Makes a decent amount of sense. And then grab one of these snowballs and throw it. And I kind of don't think there's anything more to it than that. Just send it rolling. Okay, there is more to it than that. Alright, so we'll split up and then move this back over here. Then we'll pick up the orb, which I assume is a snowball. And then so can we get enough momentum and get like all the way to the edge to get the ball down there? No. So must be a case that we need this here first, then we throw it, then we swap and bring it down this way, and then give it a bit of a push. And that looks like that's just going to shoot us up to the next checkpoint. This really doesn't feel like we're going to fight a big mouse though, unless the mouse is underwater.
supaya kasi tikitchok na ramon negiplugo.
So, I don't know what kind of mouse can just be underwater. Although I guess if it's a magical giant mouse, whatever, anything is possible. You'd almost think it was a nutria or some other kind of water-based rodent or water-based animal. Could have definitely been a seal or something. Another achievement. When the two brothers arrive at the lake, one brother told the other, "Go into the water, the mouse has place somewhere in this lake." He sits watching the lake. Alright. We have one more insight. This may be a slightly longer experience than I was hoping for, but I'd be surprised if there's more than 30 more minutes of gameplay. We're back to seeing a little bit more foliage and a little bit brighter imagery, which is interesting. You could see a case where you would have had 4 separate acts: summer, winter, fall, and spring in Alaska. And the dangers potentially around winter. We get knocked in the water, she gets knocked out, the fox wakes her up. So are we going to have some kind of weird underwater battle, or are we just going to have a chase sequence? Wow. Just straight up screaming as you get crunched to death. I definitely should have seen that coming, but this may very well just be a maze. I don't know if the maze here, though, is to move really fast or to pick the right path. See here, it seems like it's actually more of a case of not picking the wrong path as much as picking the right character to play as. You're not going to get a lot of insight there. It's just going to be trial and error as far as which character are you really supposed to be playing as. We still don't have the bola, so we can only really attack with these rocks. Could we squeeze down here and squeeze by? Yes. Can we do anything else? That seems too dangerous. Okay. So we go here. We throw that. Then yeah, it seems to me like we're probably just supposed to push this back down here. and then we can just throw the ball on and have him eat it. So that's not helpful. That would be. Okay. So it's throw the ball, then move the spirit down quickly. And with the clunky controls, that's kind of questionable. If you could get that on the first try, then I assume what I'm supposed to do is push this back up here. And you'd kind of think it would snap into place in a binary state, but it doesn't. Actually, it lets you have a middle spot. And then for co-op, you have to solve the swimming from point A to point B twice, which that would be one of the few examples in which both players, if they were playing co-op, could actually do something at the same time. Boy, I sure hope I was quick saved at some point there. Okay, so you have this. We're back on the boat and we have this boss fight continuing in a weird way. I suppose finding a way to have a boss fight in a platformer is probably a little bit more difficult. Even if you go to like the likes of Mario 64, the arena boss fights against Bowser are fairly distinct. Got lucky there. So I suppose this is a story of cooperation, but it still has this weird values in that you start the game harassing a regular mouse, and you end the game fighting a giant mouse. Really feels like a story that has been written by the victor. In the sense that there's really no reason that they would have been attacking the giant mouse or dealing with the giant mouse. So I think it is intentional here that I cannot reach the tail. But I question how this really is supposed to play. And yeah, the screaming is not pleasant. If you're struggling with the game, having screaming in your ears is never super fun. But it is at least a reasonable response. Okay, I guess what I'm supposed to do, now that I think of it some more, is that I'm probably supposed to do this. And buy myself some time. probably supposed to put this in the middle. Just do that. And you make the long jump here. Then we go ahead and push this here. Then we jump and grab the tail. I still think then we're going to have to move it back in the other direction so that the currents push you in this way. There are several other ice-based or water-based games, not particularly ice-based games. There's actually very few ice-based games. I can only think of a couple actually, and I couldn't even name the one I'm really thinking of. But yeah, you have the game Raft, you have Subnautica, and several games where you have oceans. You have Wind Waker, and for the most part, even if you're trying really hard to do a good job having an ocean-based or water-based game, it is quite a struggle to make water games or water levels make sense and work. They are difficult to say the least. Let's go ahead and move our character up here. Yeah, I bet the last insight is going to unlock when we finish the whole game. Alright, we're too high up to start with. Come on. So that's not the goal. Because he just swallows the ball. The goal is probably to move this upward. Like that. Then we throw that, and then we move this down. Several different options here. Well, this is quite the puzzle. Pull this all the way up here. And then maybe you do that. No. That doesn't protect it either. Am I supposed to put the boat in the exact right position? And you just really don't have time for all of that to happen, though. So if I'm supposed to take this to the next location, like what stops it from getting up there and getting the tail in the way? As soon as I get close to the tail, it kind of knows what I'm trying to do. this middle step might be something. Although it doesn't seem like it's anything. I could see a different version of this game where you are just directly controlling the jet stream too, just to have that tighter, quick controls. Wait a minute, maybe that's it. Maybe this is almost like a combination lock where the move is to do this to get it to move down. Then you move it down one way here. That way when I throw this, it pushes it? Maybe? Maybe I need to get closer to the edge. Then that buys us some time. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's the trick. So we've got to buy ourselves a little bit of time. And this is getting a little too complicated in a way that I wouldn't fully really appreciate. I'd want a little bit more variety if you're going to try to make the game bigger. And if you were going to make the game bigger and have this level of complexity, I would probably want to see something else. And I grabbed the tail off screen. I guess we're supposed to just chase after the fox, and we kind of see how the whole game would make sense if the fox often was your breadcrumb trail, showing you the direction to go. For the most part, in the game, the fox isn't showing you where to go. Now we're just seeing a black screen and hearing music, and I don't mind hearing music, but you really should maybe have something on the subtitles to show that, or imply if you're gonna have the credits show up, or if I'm supposed to press the A button. Alright, I hit A and the B button to skip shows up. So either the video has completely glitched here, or they ran out of budget for video. Let's see. I'm hitting the control sticks and not seeing anything. This is the absolute worst way to have music playing. It's far too much music for a black screen to play. Let's hit the pause menu just to show that it's working. Otherwise, we didn't unlock that final insight, however. Yeah, this really does just feel glitched. Could we even restart from a checkpoint if we wanted to. No. See, and this has been about an hour and 20 minutes, and I could see a version of this game where you had 6, 7, 8, maybe 20, 30 stories that are all fairly separate stories, and each one would be its own chapter and its own experience, maybe interconnected by a narrator telling you these stories around the campfire type experience. But if you were going to do that, then you definitely would need to make sure every chapter is fairly tight and get this experience of the Fox Tales down to closer to 50 minutes. And a big way you could do that certainly is just make the platforming super easy. This is not a game that I think benefits from being difficult. This is not something like Super Meat Boy or any of the other precision platformer games where speed runs and death counts add things. I guess I have to skip here. Like, the only other thing I could do is just sit here and listen to the music. Yeah, so I hit B, and when I skip that, then we have the credits start playing, so it does just feel like that was totally a glitch. So yeah, this is the same credits as we saw before. And yeah, the Tale of the Two Brothers is not much better than the main story. I will say the Tale of the Two Brothers is perhaps more of a linear story in that you have just the giant mouse as your antagonist, and you're not all of a sudden fighting a big man after fighting the bad man. And you're not dragging out the narrative, but it's too simplistic, and it really doesn't feel like it's doing proper storytelling, where I would think if you were going to forgo all tradition and forgo all history and just ignore the way the story had been told in the past, you would want the brothers to have learned a lesson or been punished for chasing the mouse or something like that. They would have needed to learn something. They were already good at fighting and already good at swimming and already good at hunting at the beginning of the story, so there's no growth in the characters. There's an odd kind of almost lack of respect for animals in the second story after all the cultural insights of the first part of the game swore that they really did respect all the animals. They're not hunting the great mouse for food. They're fighting the great mouse just because they happen to run across the great mouse. And that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, you could easily just tweak the story a little bit by saying the two brothers were out hunting for the last hunt of the fall before winter, and they had just caught a seal, they had just caught a caribou, something like that. The great mouse grabbed, swallowed the caribou, the seal, the whale, whatever they caught, ate it whole, and thus then they have to chase after the great mouse to get their food back, or hunt the great mouse to replace the food. Then you have a noble pursuit in the culture. it would be nice, certainly when telling the story, if the two brothers had more of a backstory and more of a characterization, but clearly these are tales that are told around campfires verbally, so that's why they're not that long. This is hardly Star Wars, with just the level of detail. Yeah, and then the brothers could hunt the great mouse and maybe learn something from the great mouse, or see that the great mouse himself was eating the food whole to then regurgitate it to his children, mice, and so they offer a portion of their food once they get it back to the great mouse, and the great mouse is grateful, and a new level of respect with nature is ascertained, so that, yeah, just really feels like there should be a moral to the story, versus this just being kind of random stories. And maybe there is a moral in the story and I'm just not getting it because I'm not part of their tribe. Although also in one of those insights it kind of implies that there's basically two tribes that have been split off, one up the river and one on the coast. I think there's probably a lot less to complain about the Foxtail story and the Two Brothers story than there is the main game, because there's just so much more in the main game to criticize. And yeah, them having a different narrator and changing the two brothers into the two friends, probably the right move. It makes things make more sense, certainly. It is very weird in the credits, though, that they're not just mentioning the book and the story. And yeah, let's just watch this Respect for All Things playback, which I don't know how the Coastal Brothers really resolves its narrative as Respect for All Things after you kill the Great Mouse. You could have even made an argument that the Great Mouse was just eating too much food and had gotten fat and was over hunting the area, and that's why they needed to kill it. But yeah, let's watch this and then we'll be done with this game. I seriously doubt I'd ever want to play it again, so I'm crossing my fingers that I've gotten all the achievements in the game and that there isn't some secret requirement. Almost anything that would require me to play the game in totality a second time would be a no-go, but if there was something where it seemed fairly easy and I could just jump into a chapter, I might consider it.
So to really reinforce Iñupiat values, the things that our elders identify that's important to them, we really thought of respect for all things, respect for the animals in particular in this case. And so we've added a prelude to the story. An experience with a little mouse is where Nuna and Fox, they forget to respect this little mouse. Something that my Uncle John just told us is that you only go after animals if you intend to use it for food. You don't play with it. You don't mess around with it or tease it, even if it's all in fun. Well, once Nuna and Fox defeat the giant mouse, that's when they learn their lesson, where the mouse comes back to them, their little mouse, their friend. And
so that was the video we
really
were
is
supposed to
about
be
respect
seeing.
for all things, respecting all animals all the time, never forgetting to respect them. And that's an essential Iñupiat value. It's one of the key things that our elders always talk about.
I'm still not really sure. Okay, I just got an achievement for watching all those. Like, let's see, if we were to jump here to this point, we'd probably have to do the whole boss fight again. I just don't think it's worth it. It might be even worse than that. Yeah, I think it's actually much worse than just the final boss fight. I think I would have to do the entire lake chapter again. Well, that is just the absolute worst place to have a glitch happen. Yeah. Let's go to main menu. I don't know if this background is particularly the best background for the game. It doesn't perhaps sell the game as well as it could have. What if we would have hit continue? Nah, it's just gonna put us at the lake again. Maybe if I hadn't started a chapter, I could have then hit continue from a quick save. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else really to say. Like, it took me a really, really long time to find a point where it felt like I could cover this game, and getting around to it, it probably wasn't really worth the wait. There is definitely a lot here that I find regrettable. The fact that there isn't a dictionary just to tell me certain words, like Iñupiat, is that a tribe or is that just their word for Eskimo, since they don't want to use Eskimo, even though one of the cultural insights did say Eskimo football at one point. Should the cultural insights be locked behind the game, or should they be unlocked as soon as you purchase it, so that some people could just watch the cultural insights to begin with? I would say they probably should be unlocked by default. That way you could have a slightly larger audience. I could see this game being like required playing in some college level native culture history class, and it would be so much better if you assigned a class to watch the cultural insights without having to make them also play the game, because undoubtedly there will be some people that wouldn't want to play the game or wouldn't be able to beat the game, and that's just an extra barrier to the obvious focus here of education, although I don't think it really does the greatest job of education. This feels very much like a PBS episode that would have been an hour or two as a documentary that is just kind of filling time. It's not going to change the world. It's not the kind of documentary that I think would end up in independent theaters, let alone your standard movie theater where people would see it and hear about it, and it definitely wouldn't end up on a standard TV channel. It might show up maybe on something like the History Channel, if the History Channel actually was about history, but more than likely it would just be on something like BBC, PBS, some publicly funded channel that very few people actually watch. There is perhaps an idea where you could make a game with multiple tribes and culture stories around the world, but the focus there would be very, very weird and divided. You get maybe some of that with Assassin's Creed if you think about particularly some of the early Assassin's Creed games where you're in an ancient time or in the past and in a very different place. The first Assassin's Creed, you're in the Middle East, and so there's room for some cultures there between the Templar Christians and the Muslim assassins, although they bend over backwards to not really point that part out, that there are Muslims in the first Assassin's Creed area. But there isn't a big emphasis on that either. I guess at a certain level, it's probably just the case that there's not really a lot of room for education in video games. Edutainment as a concept has always been a way to sell games to parents that don't want their kids playing video games otherwise. They really are not doing a great job of making this an entertainment first experience, or even an interactive first experience. The platforming is better compared to the last game I played, Dear Esther. It has a lot more interactive, but that's just holding it to a very low bar. And in the same vein, yes, compared to Dear Esther Landmark Edition, this tells two complete stories that are actually creatively written by actual creative people, instead of Dear Esther, which is a random word salad generator as far as I can tell. But yeah, I don't think I want to get too critical on this game. It is a unique way to step out of your comfort zone, certainly. So for that reason, I would suggest it. It's not going to take that much time. It's not going to be that difficult. But don't hold your breath that it's going to rock your world or give you a deep new insight of the Iñupiat people, or Eskimos in general, Native First Nations people in general. I kind of feel like a survival game could have done just as well. And certainly, since some of those survival games are fairly popular, it is worth trying, certainly, to have a semi-asset flip game set in a snowy environment. There is one of those Don't Starve games is set in a fairly snowy environment. And yeah, there have been some other games on snowy planets or snowy environments, but I don't think any of those games have ever had more of a Eskimo feel to them, for lack of a better term. And so that there is room for more games around this culture, or at least slightly inspired by this culture. But you definitely would also have to be fairly careful about it too. In a similar way, there's room for a lot of Native American characters in video games, but it hasn't been done particularly well. Turok is about the only game series that has had Native Americans, and even that is not particularly as respectful as it probably should have been. There was the original Prey game, not the newest game that uses the word Prey, had a Native American protagonist. But that's about the only couple of series that I can even think of. Anyways, I guess I'll just leave it at that. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.